Today is October 17th, 2014, and we are interviewing James Lampe at the Illinois State Library. Jim is 66 years old, having been born on October 3rd, 1949. My name is Regina Korthals.
48.
Oh, 48. Well, 1948. And my name is Regina Korthals, and I'll be the interviewer. So, Mr. Lampe, can you tell us where and when you were born?
I was born in Breeze, Illinois in 1948.
And who are or were your parents, and what were their occupations?
My parents were Al and Helen Lampe, and they were farmers. My dad was a farmer, and he worked construction on the side. So.
Did you have siblings?
Yes.
Their names and genders, and if they had any military service?
I had 3 brothers, Jack, Joe, and Jerry, 1 sister, Judy, and no one was lucky enough to get in the military but me.
So what were you doing before you entered the service?
I was building cars for Ford Motor Company in Hazelwood, Missouri.
Which branch of the military did you serve?
Army.
And what was the highest rank you achieved?
Spec 4, or an E4, whichever it's called. E4 was the highest rank.
Okay. Did you enlist or were you drafted?
I was drafted. I went voluntary draft. I knew that within 1 or 2 months I was going to be drafted, so at that point of time, everybody pretty well knew they were going there, unless they were going to college, would get married or something, have some reason they wouldn't be drafted. But otherwise, pretty well everybody in my era went high school to a job, a year, maybe 2 years by that time to draft to catch them. And you would be you'd be signed up for 2 years of government work, you know.
Yeah. What happened when you departed for training camp and during your early days of training?
Well,
were you not used to that kind of structure? Were you not, like, was it a big change for you? Or
yeah, it was quite
scared?
a change. Yeah. I just been from a small town country kid, you know, and you get thrown in with people from all over the country and the world, and origins and beliefs and disbeliefs and misbeliefs, and yeah, it was pretty cultural change for me, you know. And I was normally used to associating with people who were basically, I guess, courteous, kind, so forth. And in the military, when you're going for boot camp, you don't run into those people. They're not there to be your friend or your mother or your father. They're there to train you, and they let you know that pretty quick, you know.
Do you recall your instructors?
No, I really don't.
No, they didn't make a lasting impression on you?
Well, they did, but not their names. Most of them were all returned guys from Vietnam who've been there and back, and they pretty well reminded you of that a lot of time and what's going to happen to you if you don't listen to them, you know. So.
Yeah. Did you receive any specialized training? If so, in what?
Yeah, I guess I got specialized training in a useful civilian occupation. They trained me to be an infantry soldier, so not a lot of job market for that, you know, after you get out.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was why I ended up being an infantry soldier.
And how did you adapt to military life, including the physical regimen, barracks, food, social life?
Well, I guess I adapted as well as anybody. Probably better than some. Some guys decided they didn't like that, so they would go AWOL and end up getting caught, coming back, and have to start the whole process over. Well, I just kind of grin and bear it, you know, put up with it for a few more weeks and get on, you know, just get it behind you. Because everybody said, well, once you're through all this training, you know, your life would get a lot better in the military. Well, once I was done with training, I got sent to the war, so it didn't really improve a lot right away. You know, it took a while.
Yeah. So as far as like physical regimen and that stuff, having been on a farm, had you done a lot of physical stuff already?
Yeah, the physical stuff I didn't really have no problem with. And I was a young guy, fit, weighed a whole lot less than I weigh today, and I was used to hard work, so it didn't bother me too much. Now running, I wasn't real good at running, but I adapted to that. I could hang in there running, but that wasn't my favorite thing. But I could walk all day long, you know.
So and also at the barracks, like you had brothers. So were you used to share rooms with your brothers, or?
Yeah, you mean
Yeah.
at home or in the military?
And well, at home you had brothers, so I would imagine barracks you're with a bunch of guys, and maybe
Yeah, it was just
some people wouldn't be used to that.
yeah, a whole row of beds and bunks and a foot locker, and that's what you had, you know.
Yeah. The food,
Yeah,
you
I
didn't think it
guess
was that bad? I always think of that
it
kind of
was
stuff.
something to eat, put it that way. I was
Yeah.
hungry,
You don't
so,
ever
you know.
crave anything that you used to have back then, huh?
Yeah, I craved it all, Mom's cooking, but
Yeah.
that wasn't in the cards, so you just, if you're hungry, you eat what you can get, you know.
Yeah, yeah. For social life, what did you do when you would have your time, away? Did you have any of that really
You know,
during
and
your basic?
no, not very much because I don't remember how many weeks for sure, but several weeks, probably the first 4 weeks or something, you didn't do anything but be in training. And when you did get a pass later on in basic training, I just went home. So, uh, you know, I didn't spend a lot of time at the fort or whatever when I wasn't on duty.
So now we're going to discuss your wartime service and where did you serve
I served in Vietnam,
in
and
particular?
yeah, I was in they call it the I Corps area, which is the northern part of Vietnam. It was outside of Chu Lai, which is probably 50 miles south of Da Nang, I guess, which is a big base also. But Chu Lai to me was a big base, but I hadn't been, you know, to a lot of the bases to compare them. But I think I flew in the country in the southern part in Bien Hoa, and I spent a few days down there, and then they put me on another plane, and I ended up going north. My first assignment was the first air cav, and I was just there for like a week or so before I really got to do anything. And then they decided, well, they're going to send me up north to the Marical Division. And at that time, I didn't. I just always thought that the further north you went, probably the worse it was. And
That's what I was thinking too. You were saying, tell me, because I had just read some stuff. So.
but I didn't know anything about the deal except, oh man, when you said you're going to go further north, I thought, oh man, this is great. You know, I think I fell into a pile of mud here, but there was no choice. So you just went north, and that's where I spent my time outside of Chu Lai. I guess we were there as kind of a defense for the base of Chu Lai because it was a sizable air base, and we were probably, you know, I can't honestly say how far we were outside of Chu Lai, but our division and our base camp was in Chu Lai, but I was there very, very little. Once you got in country and got assigned to your unit, you got sent to the field, and we were probably, you say, I don't know how far we were out of Chu Lai. It could have been 5 miles or 10 miles, I don't know, but we were just pretty well always in the bush, you know. We just did nightly ambushes and search and destroy missions and things like that. To kind of, I guess we were there to keep any big forces from being put together and being a threat to the Chu Lai base. But yeah, we were basically living in the field.
Okay, so you were not on the front lines in any of this. You were more.
Well, there was really no front lines in Vietnam. I mean, you could be, if you were at a big base, you could feel, I guess, relatively secure because you had all this defense around you. But even if you're on a bigger base, you would still take incoming rockets and things like that. The enemy really didn't care of any particular spot they would hit in there. They would just fire some rockets in there because they knew that they'd probably fall somewhere inside that base, you know. And that was their goal. But no, where we were, it was just sporadic. You would have firefights and
Yeah, that's what that's like, combat action.
yeah.
What combat action did you witness?
Yeah, we had a lot of small skirmishes. We weren't really, not our unit really didn't get involved in any large scale week long, 2 week long, you know, dragging down and out battery. They would booby trap us and so forth. But
we'd usually get one hot meal a day if we were in a good area, and then the rest of the time you had to eat C rations. And sometimes if you're on a special operation somewhere, you would just eat C rations. You would get all stocked up with that before you'd leave, and then they'd fly you somewhere. Do your search and destroy or ambushes and whatever, and then they would fly you back in
to that general area that you had been working, and then you would go back to kind of a daily routine of, usually every night we would have an ambush set up somewhere within 3 or 4 kilometers of where our base camp was. And we would just spend our nights out there and usually move around 2 or 3 times a night, which we hated to do because with all the booby traps in the area, you can't even see them in the daytime. And they would have us doing that at night, which we were not real fond of doing, but I guess somebody thought we had to do that. So we would, we'd usually spend our nights moving around a couple different times in the darkness, setting up different ambushes. And yeah, during the day we would hike back to some other area and spend our day for resupplying and so forth. You know.
So when you would see or know there was a lot of stuff going on around you, did you witness any casualties, destruction, any of that kind of stuff where you were at?
Yeah, we would. That would happen periodically. I guess we went on ambush one night, and there was 7 of us, I guess, walked out that night. Anyway, 4 of us walked back in the next day.
Was that a booby trap situation, or was
Yeah.
it?
It was a booby trap situation, and I was one of the lucky ones. I didn't get hurt, but we had one guy killed and 2 other guys sent home. They were hurt too bad to stay with us, and another guy got hit but treated at the local hospital and sent back out. And yeah, anyway, that was our. I mean, we hit several booby traps besides that, but that one directly affected
Now,
me and my squad, I guess, because there was just a small group of us that went out that night.
yeah, because I don't know, like what were some of the different kinds of booby traps and stuff that they would do?
They would use hand grenades or maybe old unexploded artillery shells that they would, our artillery shells that they would dig back out and rig them up. So if we would go by and hit the tripwire or something,
That's what I wonder
landmines.
if they were tripwires or
Yeah, they were
buried
tripwires.
things or.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, our in that instance, our point man tripped it. The second guy got most of the blast, and the third guy, and the fourth guy, and I was far enough back. I was on a machine gun team, and normally we didn't have the machine guns walking first because that's kind of a gun you want to protect because it's it's a good defensive gun.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't have that in the front. You would have that further back where those guys could have time to kind of give you a little defensive fire,
Yeah, that I'm curious too. Was it something that you would like, oh no, like you knew, or it just happens?
It just you mean the booby
Because in
traps?
movies, a lot of times, yeah, they'll show like
No.
there's a split second where everybody's like, oh no, and then it's
Well,
okay.
I mean, for us, where I was,
It just happened.
It just happened. Yeah, it just happened. Yeah,
Hmm.
and I can remember, the guys on the ground that were hurt bad, but I mean, I don't remember the whole deal. I was a few guys back, and I would think, I guess I was on like rear security, you'd call it, or something, because our machine gunner himself was up helping those guys, and I probably stayed back with the gun or whatever, because we didn't know when that happens. You don't know if that's just the start of an enemy action, or if there's nobody there and they just set the trap and they're gone.
Yeah.
So even when that stuff happens, you have to be ready for other enemy action that could be following that. You know what I'm saying? So.
Yeah. So also, while this is going on, like, you guys are sleeping during the daytime, or like
Well,
how often were you able to sleep and even
Well,
do
even
much of that?
if we were out on ambush or something, if it was like a squad size ambush, there would be 1 or 2 of us awake and the other guys would sleep. So then you would pull an hour or 2 hours and you would wake the next group of guys up, and you would just kind of rotate and sleep that way. But you didn't know I'd get to sleep a lot if you were moving about 3 times a night, walking about 1 kilometer or 2 between, you know.
Yeah, I'm just thinking
And,
nerves, like how hard is it to rest when you don't know what's gonna be going on at any, given time too.
Yeah, it's
Especially when you need to be alert.
it's not
to
the
things.
it's not the best sleeping conditions.
But I was curious,
Yeah.
like, do you feel like you can relax and get any kind of sleep, or you just get exhausted sleep to where you're
I
just,
think you just get exhausted sleep finally, because it's hotter than the hubs of hell all day, you know.
yeah,
And you're walking around in either jungle or rice paddies and slop and water, and yeah, I mean it's probably 100 degrees every day, you know.
yeah, and I
You're-
never thought about that
You're
either,
sleeping
really.
underground with the insects and mosquitoes and the leeches crawling around on you, you know.
Yeah, I've done a few things, and I've never even thought about the effects of guys that maybe are not used to being in a belting sun all day to have all this heat and all that kind of
Well,
stuff too.
But after you're there a while, it kind of,
You
I
used to it.
guess your body adapts to it, you know. And I guess just sleeping on the ground in the dirt, whatever, I guess after a while you get used to it, because after I came home, it took me a little while to sleep good in a bed, you know. I was so accustomed to sleeping on the ground, you
Make
know.
it so mushy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so too soft. Okay, what kind of friendships and camaraderie did you form while serving, and with whom?
I guess probably the biggest friendships were the guys that was in that squad with me, because you're together with them 24 hours a day, you know. You're helping them, they're helping you, they're covering you, you're covering them. And after I got out, I mean, I had never seen these guys again from the time I left there. And it isn't like we all left at the same time, because when we came in, we didn't come in as one unit. We joined existing units that were there as replacement people. So you would come in at different times, you know, so you weren't always leaving at the same time as your buddies were. But I had never really kept track of them or had any contact with them from the time we left Vietnam until 3 years ago in 2011 when I retired. I was always waiting to get a letter or a phone call from, hey, I'm so and so and I was with you in Vietnam, you know, but that never happened. And I belonged to the American Legion. I was reading their daily newspapers and so forth, figuring, oh, I'll see a reunion in there one of these days and I'll follow up on that. Well, I never saw that either. So after I retired, I started trying to track these guys down, and I had some of their home addresses from when they were inducted. So I started there, and I located, the guy who was a machine gunner before he got hurt and sent home. I located him first, and I went to the AmeriCal website on computer, and I was digging around in their records of, particular people who were there at certain times, and I saw his name in there. And along with his name, they had an email address, so I emailed him. And I mean, I thought it was probably him, but I didn't know. So I emailed him and told him who I was, and I said, I think I was carrying machine gun ammo for you in Vietnam before you got hurt. Is this the same Lee? And a day later, he shipped me an email back and said, hey, it's the same guy. So then I called him, and we talked for a while. And at that stage, I learned that him and Bob, the guy that replaced him as a machine gunner, had made contact like several years before that. And they continued to be in contact and went to a few of our reunions, which I really never even knew we had. So anyway, I kept tracking these guys down, and I found everybody that was in my squad at that time, just 7 or 8 of us. Anyway, I guess the following year, we had a division reunion in Atlanta, Georgia. And we coordinated, we would all go down there and meet. So that was the first time I had met them since Vietnam in 68 or 69, So we had a good reunion, and since then I've gone to Nashville, Tennessee for one, and I just came back from Houston, Texas for one. And 2 of those guys have been at the other ones, and one of them, my squad leader, Roger from West Virginia, he was able to go to Atlanta and Nashville, but he couldn't travel as far as Houston. He's since had a stroke and a lot of health problems, and he's got a tough time walking. So he couldn't make the travel to Houston, but I think next year we're going to Norfolk, so maybe that would be closer for West Virginia, so he might make it there.
Oh, that's nice. So, while you were there, were you able to stay in touch with family and friends back home?
Yeah, we had time to write letters and things like that. I don't remember. I'd probably write one letter a week or something like that. Letter every 2 weeks, something like that.
Sure. What did you do for recreation when you were off duty?
Over that year, you're not really off duty. But,
Yeah.
I mean, in between there, I went on R&R to Hong Kong. And as you got more time in country, a place like Australia, if you wanted to go to Australia, you had a lot of time in country. You wouldn't be a new guy and go to Australia. You had to serve probably 10 months or more in combat before you went to Australia. So I saved that till I was getting close to the end of my tour, and I went to Australia. So, yeah, so I made Hong Kong and Australia, which were both very good, enjoyable experiences. So,
Yeah. So, were you awarded any medals or citations?
I guess just the normal
The basic.
medals and citations and combat infantryman's badge, but just about all infantry guys get that. If you're 90 days under fire, you get a combat infantry badge.
So, where were you when the war ended, and do you remember that very vividly?
That would have been 1975. I was probably back home, married, had a couple kids, working a regular job, and yeah, I remember that happening. Thinking, well, a lot of stuff we did was probably probably not much use because it didn't work out,
Yeah.
But
So, how did you return home? Your time was just up, and you.
time was up. You crawled on an airplane. I think I left out of Da Nang. Said adios. I'm happy to be gone. I hope I never come back. And I guess a little memento I got at home. I think it was a Red Cross issued a picture of an airplane all divvied up in 300, or no, not 300. I think 90 days you would get one of those with little blocks in there. And every day you would take a pen and you would cross out or fill in one more block,
Mm-hmm.
So once you got the whole airplane colored in with ink or pencil or whatever you had available, that meant, hey, it's time, you're done, buddy. You're out of here. So I still got that today, and I enjoy looking at that once in a while.
Yeah, you earned that. So, how were you received by your family and your community when you came home?
Oh, the family was received me well. I think most of the community did because we were a small town. But I don't know, some other guys that I know came back weren't quite as well received. I mean, like in airports and so forth. A friend of mine I know said he flew back into Seattle, which I think that's where I flew into also. And he was waiting for a connecting flight, and a flower child came up to him and pinned a flower on him, and he said, well, I thanked her, and she said, that'll be $15. And I said, or my buddy said, well, no thank you, you can have your flower back. So then her boyfriend came up and started harassing him about being a baby killer and everything over there. So, and he said there was like 4 or 5 other people with them. And he said they were all just harassing me, And he said I wanted to just beat him in the mouth, but he said I knew that wasn't the thing for me to do since there's 4 of them and 1 of me, so I just shut up and let them spit on me and waited for my flight and got the hell out of Dodge.
Yeah. So, how did you readjust to civilian life?
Well, I think I did all right.
Didn't have any problems?
No, I just loafed around for a while, and I don't know. It was a little bit different to come back home than it was when you were there. Things that were important before weren't maybe as important, and other things were more important. I don't know. I just, I don't know, took a little while to drink some beer and run around and have fun, you know. And I don't know. It took a little while to get back to normal life, I guess, where you figure you're not, you know, your next step in the morning when you wake up wasn't going to be your last step, or the last step at night wasn't going to happen, you know. But it was a different experience, but it's over with.
The next question was, have you remained in contact? And we spoke about that a little bit, but and you're a member of veterans organizations? Did you
Yes.
say the American Legion? Anything else?
Yeah, I belong to the American Legion and the Vietnam Veterans of America. And we have a local chapter, Chapter 269 in Clinton County, and I belong to that.
And it says, what have you done since separating from the military?
Well, like I say earlier, I went back to the Ford Assembly Plant. I guess I think I had, I don't know if it's 60 days or 90 days when you get discharged from the military to go back and retain your job. So I went back in there, and the guy in personnel asked me what I was doing when I left, and I said, well, I was working in a body shop, which at the time was kind of a bad spot to work in the factory, because that was before all the air conditioning and the robots and everything else they have in there now. It was all people doing welding, which is where I was. You know, you would wear gloves up to your elbows and coveralls buttoned up to your neck. And if it was 90 outside, it was probably 115 where I was. So he said, you were in a body shop. We'll find your spot back down there. And I said, no. Before we go there, I said, you know, I got a couple years of seniority. How about if you take some of the new hires and put them down there and, you know, transfer me somewhere else in the factory? I don't care where you put me. Put me in trim, pre-delivery, paint, I don't care. And he said, how long have you been out of service? And I said, I don't know if it was 60 days or whatever. He said, well, you got 90 days, I believe, before you lose your rank, don't you? I said, yeah. My advice to you, he said, is either you go back in the military or you go to the body shop. I said, well, I think I'm going to body shop.
Yeah.
So I went back down there and walked in there and looked around, and it's the same guys doing that same job as was doing that 2 years ago. And I thought, man, I think it was, you had to have 29 and out that time to retire. And I thought, man, can I do another 20 some years in this thing, doing this, you know?
Another hot thing too. Is
Another
what I'm
hot
thinking.
thing, yeah. And I guess my values of a job changed from when I left to when I came back. Because before I left, I was a farm kid, used to doing anything. And I guess I was accustomed to the heat over there, but I guess there was different values I put in life after that, you know, and I just don't know if I can put up with something like this for the rest of my working years, you know. So I started looking around, and I put in my name at for the Corps of Engineers, which has a lake right next to us, probably 15 miles from where I live. So I put in an application there, and maybe 6 months later, they called me and asked me if I was still interested in a position there. And I said, yeah, I think I am. So I got hired there. I went from, at the time, making good money for a big company with a lot of good benefits. I think I lost $1 an hour or something, and I went to like a seasonal part-time job. And I was paying my own benefits and the whole deal. But I kept hanging around there, and I worked that way for several years, and I finally got a full-time job. And I stayed there till I had like 40 years of service, and then I retired from there. But it was the best thing I ever did in my life, because I didn't mind going to work. I looked forward going to work. And, you know, they say if you like what you do, it's not really work. Well, that was very true for me, because that assembly plant was work for me.
Yeah, were you married and having children in this transitional time, or was that after you had already?
No, I had gotten married, I guess, 2 years after I got home. And yeah, I probably had one child at that time.
So did you work in the body shop until you got on with
Yeah,
the?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I knew that I had to work somewhere. And like I say, it was good benefits, good pay. For that time, it was good pay. I think it was, I don't know, it was $4.50 or something an hour at that time, which was a lot of money. And then I gave that up for $3 and something an hour to go to work for the federal government. But like I say, it was the best change I ever did in my life, you know.
Sure. So this is just like some personal stuff. Do you have or it says, did you do or have something special for good luck?